Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going deep on Bob Camblin's Vivia.
Oh, cool.
Have you ever seen this one?
I have, yeah. It's
It's
just
pretty wild.
really interesting.
Yeah, it's a colored pencil drawing, and the first thing you see is this really peaceful scene right in the middle,
Okay.
like maybe a sunrise over a Venetian canal, all inside this square
They're
frame.
very structured, yeah.
Exactly. But then bursting out from the frame are these crazy, vibrant, flowing lines, all in color. And they
Mhm.
make like a fish shape that just like takes over the whole piece. It's super cool. And get this, we're going to look at it from all these different angles using three sources, a YouTube video analysis, and then excerpts from two books on Zen and Enlightenment.
Wow, covering all the bases.
Yeah, and it gets even better.
Right.
So Viva, it's not just a pretty picture. It's actually Camblin's tribute to his mom. So there's like this personal layer, but then it's also got all this Zen and Taoist philosophy woven in.
Oh, very cool.
I know, right? So the big question is, how can understanding this artwork, help us see the world and maybe even ourselves a little differently?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And the YouTube video we have actually jumps right into the paradox of form and emptiness,
Hmm.
which is, key in Zen Buddhism. It's amazing how Camblin shows this visually.
Okay, I'm curious. How so?
Well, the square frame, those sharp lines, they symbolize that human need for structure. It's
Mm,
like we're always trying to put things in order, categorize them, put them in neat little boxes.
I feel that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But then you have this dynamic, flowing fish shape around it, and that's the opposite
Right,
with
yeah.
like the wild, unpredictable side of life.
It's true. It's like we crave routine and stability, but then life throws us a curveball and we have to just go with the flow.
Exactly. That's the push and pull that Camblin captures perfectly in Viva.
And it's not just visual either. Think about the I Ching, that foundational text of Taoism.
Yeah.
Chapter 11 uses the analogy of a wheel. The spokes, they give it structure. But it's that empty space in the center, the hub,
Right.
that lets the whole thing work.
So you're saying the frame scene in Viva is like those spokes,
Yeah.
all neat and structured, and then the fish is like that essential emptiness.
Exactly. Taoism says that true value is often in the spaces between. Think about it. A room needs emptiness to be functional. Silence between musical notes gives the music meaning.
I like that, yeah.
Camblin is making us think about where those empty spaces are in our own lives. Where do we need to let go of control, of structure, to actually make something meaningful?
I'm going to have to think about that one. That's really interesting. The YouTube video also mentions that Viva is like a call to question how we see things and embrace the flow of life.
Definitely. It suggests that we often limit ourselves with mental and emotional frames that stop us from seeing clearly. It's like asking ourselves, what beliefs, assumptions, or perspectives am I holding on to too tightly? Could letting go of those open me up to new insights and experiences?
It's giving me a lot to think about already. Can we talk about the first book now? Zen and the Art of Enlightenment. It focuses on how Camblin's artwork is like koans, those riddles that Zen uses to challenge how we think.
Ah, yes. Koans are meant to disrupt our usual way of thinking, to lead us towards a deeper understanding. The classic one is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? It makes no sense at first, but it forces you to think outside the box, to look at things from new angles.
I see. So Viva, with its different elements and all the layers of meaning, is like a visual koan, making us look beyond the surface to find those aha moments.
Exactly. The book suggests that Viva is a mirror reflecting our own minds, our biases, our preconceptions. It invites us to experience everyday enlightenment, seeing beauty and meaning where we don't expect it, just like Camblin did with his art.
Okay, yeah.
Think about a time when you saw beauty or meaning in something that other people might have missed. What was it about that experience that changed your view?
That's a great question. I can think of a few times for sure. But before I go down that rabbit hole, let's move on to the second book, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, Volume 2.
This one goes even deeper into Vivia, right?
Yes, it does. And it has this fascinating interpretation of the fish. It sees it as a symbol of intuition and deep wisdom, something hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered.
Which again goes back to that Taoist idea of the value in emptiness. It seems like real understanding comes from looking beyond what's obvious, from exploring those spaces between, from being open to the unknown.
Exactly. And there's another layer here. The book mentions how Camblin's style could have been influenced by art movements, like abstract expressionism and surrealism.
I was wondering about that. Can you tell me more about those? How do they connect to Vivia?
Sure. Abstract expressionism, which started in the mid-20th century, was all about expressing emotions and ideas directly, without using realistic images. Think of Jackson Pollock's drip paintings.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't about showing a recognizable object, but about conveying a feeling. So, kind of like how the fish shape in Viva evokes a feeling or an idea more than showing an actual fish.
Exactly. And then there's surrealism, which also began in the early 20th century. Surrealist artists loved exploring the subconscious mind, using dreams, fantasies, and irrational things for inspiration. They'd put totally unexpected things together to create a dreamlike, disorienting feeling.
Okay, I see. So the contrast between that realistic scene in the frame and the abstract fish shape could be a surrealist thing, like a play between the conscious and subconscious minds.
That's a great connection. It shows how Camblin uses different artistic ideas to create his own visual language.
This is making me see Viva in a whole new light. It's incredible how much there is to unpack in one artwork, and it all started with a colored pencil drawing.
It really shows Camblin's talent as an artist, how he can pack so many layers of meaning into something so seemingly simple.
And we can't forget the personal touch. Viva isn't just about philosophy, it's a tribute to his mom.
It is. It's easy to get caught up in the bigger ideas. But at its heart, this piece is about love and a personal connection. I think that adds so much depth and meaning.
It brings us back to art being a mirror, reflecting not only our own minds, but also the hearts of the artists. Viva, with its mix of personal and universal themes, seems to be a perfect example of that.
Definitely. Speaking of the bigger picture, I'm curious what you think. How can we apply the things we've learned from Viva to our own lives? What does it mean for us outside of art and philosophy?
That's a great question. I think it comes back to the main themes we've been talking about. That paradox of form and emptiness, finding value in the spaces between, questioning how we see things, and recognizing everyday enlightenment.
I agree. Viva is not just about appreciating art. It's about using those lessons in our own lives. It's about finding that balance between structure and fluidity, control and surrender, logic and intuition.
So it's like Viva gives us a way to navigate life's complexities, to find meaning even in the chaos.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's about seeing life as a kind of art form, a canvas, where we can express ourselves and create something meaningful, even when things are tough and uncertain.
And maybe, like Camlin, we can find those everyday enlightenment moments in unexpected places if we're open to them.
Exactly. It's about being aware, being willing to look deeper and find the hidden beauty and wisdom around us.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I understand Bob Camlin's artwork better, but also myself and my own journey.
Me too. And the exploration of Viva doesn't have to stop here. The YouTube video mentioned how the fish could represent intuition and deep wisdom, which is a big idea in many spiritual traditions.
It's like the fish is swimming in the depths of our being, holding ancient wisdom and a connection to life's flow. But how do we tap into that inner wisdom, that intuition? How do we let it guide us?
That's the key question. And while it deserves its own deep dive, I think starting with stillness and silence in our lives is key. In those quiet moments, when we're not bombarded with stuff, we can start to hear that inner voice more clearly.
Like creating those empty spaces within ourselves, just like the empty space in the wheel from the I Ching.
Exactly. It's in those spaces, inside and out, where real wisdom can appear.
That's something to think about. I think this is a good place to wrap up our deep dive into Bob Camblin's Vivia.
I agree. It's been great to explore this artwork with you and our listeners. We hope this conversation has made you curious and giving you new ways to see the world and yourselves.
Absolutely. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep. Until next time.
See you then. Welcome back. Before we went to that, before we left off, we were talking about how Bob Camblin's Vivia works like a visual koan, making us dig deeper for a bigger meaning.
Right. And I really like that idea of the artwork being like a mirror that shows us our own minds. I think that's really insightful.
It really shows how art can make us think about ourselves. And when you bring in koans, it gets even more interesting. These aren't just riddles with simple answers. They're meant to change how we see things, to help us move past our normal ways of thinking.
So how does that work with Viva? What kind of shift in perspective is Camblin trying to get us to make?
Well, think back to that idea of the paradox of form and emptiness. The Viva koan might be pushing us to find that balance in our lives too, to see where we need structure and where we need to be okay with the empty spaces, the things we don't know.
Yeah.
It's about that dance between control and letting go.
That makes sense to me. It's easy to get caught up in trying to control everything, to make everything perfect and structured.
Yeah,
But maybe real growth happens when we accept that some things are out of our control and we learn to deal with those spaces gracefully.
exactly. It's about seeing the beauty and potential in those empty spaces, those uncertain moments. And both of the books we're looking at emphasize that this whole process of figuring out the meaning is really personal.
Right.
They want people to connect with the art in their own way, to find their own meaning in it.
That's what makes art so cool. It speaks to each of us differently based on our own experiences and beliefs and perspectives. It's not about finding the one right answer. It's about thinking about the work and letting it spark those internal conversations.
Exactly. It's about asking questions, looking at things from different angles, and ultimately figuring things out for yourself. Viva is like a launch pad for self-discovery,
Yeah.
pushing us to explore our own minds and uncover those hidden depths.
I also wanted to hear more about those art movements you mentioned before, abstract expressionism and surrealism. How do they fit in with Camblin's style and the overall message of Viva?
Well, remember how abstract expressionism was about showing emotions and ideas without realistic pictures?
Yeah.
Viva does something similar with that abstract fish-like shape. It's not a real fish, but it represents things like intuition, wisdom, and the flow of life.
Right, it's abstract to convey a deeper meaning, like how those artists used abstract forms to express their inner experiences.
Exactly. And then we have the surrealism influence. Surrealism was all about the subconscious mind, using strange and unexpected elements to create a dreamlike feeling,
Hmm.
like almost disorienting.
So, could we look at the contrast between that realistic, structured scene in the frame and the abstract flowing fish as a surrealist thing, like a play between the conscious and subconscious parts of our minds?
I think that's a great observation. It highlights how Viva takes inspiration from different art styles to make its own unique visual language, encouraging us to explore both the rational and the irrational, the conscious and subconscious.
This makes me want to go back and look at Viva again with fresh eyes. There's so much depth and nuance to discover,
Yeah.
and to think it all came from a simple colored pencil drawing.
It shows you how good Camblin is as an artist, how he can weave so many layers of meaning into something that looks so simple at first glance.
Right, and we shouldn't forget about the personal aspect either. Viva isn't just a philosophical exploration, it's also a heartfelt tribute to his mother.
That's true. It's easy to focus on the big ideas, but at its core, this artwork is about love and personal connection. That adds another layer of depth and meaning.
It reminds us that even in the most abstract or philosophical art, there's often a human story at the heart of it all, a personal connection that we can relate to on an emotional level.
Absolutely. It brings us back to that idea of art as a mirror, reflecting not just our own minds, but the hearts of the artists who made it.
Hmm,
And Viva, with its blend of personal and universal themes, really seems to embody that idea.
definitely. Speaking of the bigger picture, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. How can we use the things we've learned from Viva in our own lives? What does it all mean for us outside of art and philosophy?
That's a great question. I think it goes back to those key themes we talked about. Embracing the paradox of form and emptiness, finding value in the spaces between, challenging our perceptions, and seeing those everyday enlightenment moments.
Okay.
Viva isn't just about enjoying a piece of art. It's about applying those lessons to how we live. It's about finding that balance between structure and going with the flow, between control and letting go, between logic and intuition.
So it's like Viva is giving us a framework for dealing with life's complexities, for finding meaning and purpose even when things are chaotic and uncertain.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It's about realizing that life itself is an art form in a way, a canvas where we can express ourselves and create something meaningful even when we face challenges and things we don't know.
And maybe just like Camplin, we can find those moments of everyday enlightenment in the most unexpected places if we're just open to seeing them.
Exactly. It's about developing that awareness, that willingness to look deeper and find the hidden beauty and wisdom that's all around us.
This conversation has been so enlightening.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of Bob Camlin's work, but also of myself and my own journey.
I feel the same way. You know, the exploration of Viva doesn't have to end here. The YouTube video we talked about pointed out how the fish in Viva could be a symbol of intuition and deep wisdom,
Right.
a concept that comes up in many spiritual traditions.
It's like the fish is swimming in the deepest parts of us, carrying ancient wisdom and a connection to the flow of life. But how do we tap into that inner wisdom, that intuition? How do we let it guide us?
That's a really important question. And while it deserves a closer look on its own, I think a good place to start is by creating stillness and silence in our lives. In those quiet moments when we're not constantly being bombarded with external stuff, we can start to hear that inner voice more clearly.
Like creating those empty spaces within ourselves, just like the empty space at the center of the wheel from the Tao Te Ching.
Exactly. It's in those spaces, both inside and out, where true wisdom and insight can come through.
That's a powerful thought to keep in mind. And I think this is a good point for us to wrap up our deep dive into Bob Camblin's Viva.
I agree. It's been great to explore this artwork with you and our listeners.
Absolutely.
We hope this conversation has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to see the world and yourselves with fresh eyes.
Totally agree. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep. Until next time,
See you then.
welcome back. You know, before we wrap up our deep dive on Viva, I wanted to go back to something you said before about stillness and silence and how they can help us get in touch with our inner wisdom and intuition.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's something that's been talked about in so many spiritual traditions, for ages.
Right.
It's all about making room for that inner voice to come out, that deeper knowing that gets kind of lost in the noise of everyday life.
It's so true, especially now when we're always connected and everything's so busy.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel swamped with information and all the stimulation around us.
Right.
But Viva, with its focus on emptiness and the spaces between things, it's like it's offering a different way to look at things.
I agree. The artwork reminds us that there's value in quiet, in those moments of reflection where we can connect with our deeper selves. Remember when you first looked at Viva and you felt like there was more to it than what you saw on the surface? It's the same with our own lives.
Yes.
There's so much wisdom and insight inside each of us waiting to be discovered. We just need to give it space to come out.
Yeah, and the second book, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, Volume 2, really stresses that, right? It talks about how the fish in Viva could represent that part of us that already has the answers, even when our conscious minds are full of doubt or confusion.
Exactly. It's about learning to trust that gut feeling, that intuition that leads us toward what's right. It's not always about logic or reason. It's more like feeling our way through life, listening to that inner compass.
So how do we learn to trust that intuition? It's easy to overthink everything and second guess ourselves.
I think it starts with paying attention, noticing those little nudges, those gut feelings that pop up. Instead of ignoring them, take a second and ask yourself, what's my intuition trying to tell me here?
It's like those everyday enlightenment moments the first book mentioned. Being present, noticing what's around us and what's going on inside us, and recognizing those little signs and synchronicities that are always guiding us.
That's it. And remember how Viva made us question the frames we put on the world?
Yes.
That applies to our own thoughts and beliefs too. We often get stuck in rigid thinking patterns and assumptions.
Right.
But if we're willing to question them, we open ourselves up to new possibilities and let our intuition lead us in unexpected directions.
This whole deep dive has been amazing. We've gone from breaking down the symbols in a colored pencil drawing to exploring these deep philosophical concepts and even practical ways to use those ideas in our own lives. It's incredible how art can be such a powerful tool for growth and transformation.
It really is. And the great thing about Viva is that it doesn't give us simple answers or tell us exactly what path to follow. It invites us to explore, to ask questions, and discover our own truths. Just like how Camblin mixed different artistic styles to create his own, we're encouraged to use different sources, spiritual traditions, philosophical ideas, personal experiences, to create our own understanding.
Yeah, it's a reminder that learning about ourselves is a journey that never ends, and there's always more to discover and explore. I feel like Viva has given me a whole new way of looking at things, one that embraces those paradoxes, values emptiness, and encourages me to trust my gut.
Absolutely. And I think that's the true power of art, to inspire us, challenge us, and lead us toward a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Bob Camblin's Viva. We hope you found it as interesting and inspiring as we have. And remember, if that square frame in Viva represents the limits of what we currently understand, what's beyond those borders? What could you discover by embracing the flow of life like that fish and questioning the things you assume to be true? Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.
Bye, everyone.